maybe just finish out this morning with Matthew. And Matthew, we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years. And I'll be honest with you, in all my years of pastoring, I've heard some amazing stories and testimonies, but perhaps none quite as unique as yours. So maybe we can start by saying, Matthew, how many people in your world, in your family, either direct or relatives, have you lost in this season that you and I have been talking as a result of suicide?
So, let's see, we're talking 6 people. I've lost 5 people from suicide, and I lost my brother from an alcohol overdose over the span from the time I was 6 years old. I walked in the room right after my father shot himself.
So say that again. I'm sorry, I don't want to dramatize this. I don't.
So that's 6 people.
You walked into your...
Oh, I walked in right after my father shot himself when I was 6. I found him. I heard the gun go off, walked into the bedroom and found him laying on the floor.
That was your father?
Yes, sir.
When you were 6 years old?
Yes, sir.
Move forwards now. Tell us your story.
Fast forwarding, I'm 20 years old, I enlisted in the military. I'm serving overseas, and I get an AMCROSS message, an official notification that my younger brother, my only sibling, had died from alcohol poisoning. So I had to fly back stateside, or back to Japan, where I was stationed out of, pick up my wife and my late daughter, and go bury my little brother next to my dad.
Okay. That must have been hard.
It was difficult, absolutely.
So, because your dad took his life, and in a sense, your brother slowly took his life through that alcoholic abuse and was never got freedom from that.
Right.
And now let's talk about what else has taken place since then.
So a few months after my younger brother died, I got a phone call that my mom's brother had hung himself. I was real close to him, got me into baseball cards and sports and whatnot. And I didn't get to go home for the funeral for that because they had found his body about 3 months after he had done it. So so processing my uncle's death on the heels of my brother's death, and oh, by the way, I'm still working through all the stuff from my dad. So here I am in a sense of abandonment and alone at this point.
So you lost your father, you lost your brother,
right?
You lost
an uncle.
And then let's move forwards.
And then so that was in 2004, the loss of my brother and my uncle. And then in fast forward in 2007, I got a phone call from my older cousin saying that his younger sister, just an 18-year-old girl, had hung herself. So I had to fly out of Hawaii, where I was stationed up at the time, had to fly back to Rhode Island, where I'm from, and we had to bury another person in the same cemetery.
And this is all in your military life?
Absolutely, besides my father, but since I joined the military, correct.
And then move forwards again.
And then fast forwarding to 2012, once again I'm deployed. I'm senior enlisted at this point, serving on board a warship. We're doing operations in the Middle East, and I get an email. I log in early in the morning, check my messages, and I see that Maddie, that's what my family calls me. Maddie, I hate to inform you this, but Uncle Frank took his life the other day. So at that point, it was already key and strategically placed with some brothers on board the ship. When I say brothers, I mean Christian brethren. So that was already, God looking in the rearview mirror, realigned all that up. And so I went back home after we did several stops from the Middle East and several airports. Finally got back home and had to bury my uncle next to my brother, next to my cousin, next to my dad.
Are most men here thinking, how is this man still breathing? Let's keep going.
So at that point, I was, like I said, strategically placed by God with some good Christian brethren that had kind of locked arms with me, routinely checked up on me. Hey, Matt, how you doing? Because the uncle that took his life, that last one in 2012, was my dad's older brother. It was his gun my dad used back in 1984. So, and he had his own demons he was wrestling with. Fast forwarding to 2015, what would be the hardest thing any parent ever has to walk through. I walked into the house, into the closet, and found my 15-year-old daughter right after she had shot herself. And having to process that and digest that, and the things I was thinking the moment I found her was one of the things of, why God? Not my dad, first my dad, then my brother, all these other people, and now her. And then, shifting calling 911 and all the remedial stuff you do with that. And plus, seeing that and having to compartmentalize that to...
It was about that time, I think, is when you were coming into Wave. Is that right? Or just before that?
It was just before that. We got stationed out here back in 2010. We were attending a church in Hawaii we had talked about, and that we were looking to get plugged into a church very similar to that. But I live about an hour's drive away, so the convenience of driving back and forth, and my wife and I was like, well, let's go to a local church. We were going to a local church in that area at the time of the loss of my daughter.
Yeah.
However, on the heels of that, one of the things that I walked through, of course, the angst, the bitterness, the sense of, the enemy playing that war with your mind, yeah, where's your God now?
Yeah.
And that's when I knew that, turn that over to the Lord. It's okay, Lord, I'm not gonna let this keep me on my back, because I got a family I gotta fight for. And this hit list that the enemy's had, not just on me, but every single person, that this thing's not taking me out. And the Father saying, okay, get up off the mat, kid. So.
When Matthew shared with me his story, I said, Matthew, never in my life in one person and one family. And I said to him, this is a spiritual thing. This is a spirit of death. And if you know me, I'm not that guy that tries to put spirits on things, but we are discerning. Right. I said, man, I tell you something, there's just an attack on you. There's an attack on your marriage. There's an attack on your message. There's an attack on your ministry. And you learned some valuable things. You realized the importance of local church.
Absolutely.
And you said to me, you said, Steve, do you know, when I think about it at the time, about the convenience of it, you realized it actually doesn't matter if it was an hour's drive, it's worth the drive.
Absolutely.
When you weigh this up
right.
in the life of all this, you kind of think, and there's a message for men today, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sometimes we're thinking, do we get out of bed and do we go to church, and it's just down the road?
Yeah.
And here's a man in hindsight thinking to himself about the importance of all of that,
right.
and the perspective of that. How much has church and helped you? I know God's there. Everybody understands that. But I'm trying to drive home a message here about actually we're not meant to do life alone. That God is not all you need. You need community. You need brothers. You need the church. You need men. I mean, in the natural, I don't know how this man's standing. You're with me here. I don't know how this man gets out of bed in the morning, but I do know that it's not in the natural. It's in the supernatural, and it's God that's sustaining you.
That's right,
and you're soon going to be moving, I think, to Texas.
Right, so we'll be transferring, Lord willing, about 9 months. We'll get plugged in with our church, local church down there. So.
But you need to know what this man's done. He's actually said to me, well, Steve, I know that I'm going to be doing my next season in Texas. He goes, I'm going to be living in San Antonio. Pastor Rick Godwin spoke here. I want him to be my pastor. He's already flown out and met with Pastor Rick Godwin. And Rick Godwin's already met him and can't wait for him to come. And he says, out of this, I want to write a book. I want to tell my story. I want to give hope to other men.
You hit on something, Pastor, that's so important. The importance of having brothers that can link up with you. When you got fist-sized holes in your shield, and it's at the point like, okay, the devil is beating the snot out of me, I'm flat on my back. You got to have those brothers you're going to lock arms with, and you get that from this kind of stuff right here. You don't get that hanging out with the buddies in the backyard. You got to be in the church that has brothers you can call at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've had a long conversation with Chris before. You got to have that, and this is stuff right here that keeps you accountable, and you can have those guys say, hey, how you doing, man? How's your faith going? I see, what can I pray for? That genuine connection. And the leadership things. When I approached you last year, I said, hey, I got all this stuff. I can't do this on my own. Where do I start?
Yeah. So needless to say, I've kept a close eye on this man and tried to be as good a pastor as I possibly can. And thank you for your service, and thank you for your courage to share that today. Thank each one of these. Casey, John, Davey. Come on, this is man up. This is man up.